love that. Reassuring, recording in progress. Hello, Elizabeth. Hello, Liz Long. Who wrote a book,
Carolyn,
Navigating Shitstorms.
good morning. I did, and
That
the Audible version is out.
amazing.
I know.
So satisfying.
Well, it's so much easier for a lot of people, who are busy go-getters and want to be efficient while they're driving, or who just fall asleep when they actually hold a physical book and read, which is a lot of people I know.
Yeah.
So the listening's a whole new ball game.
I love the listening, and like, yeah, the being able to listen when you're exercising, being able to go back and re-listen to something, hearing it in the author's voice.
Yeah, I did narrate the whole thing.
Yeah, so I didn't even plan to talk about this today, but tell me about, just briefly. Everything's just brief. One day we're going to get this to 20 minutes, not today, but
right. I know. Yeah. No, it was a great experience. It took a lot more effort and time and energy than I expected, as almost everything, well, not everything, but a lot of things do when you've not ever done it before.
yeah.
I had some really heartfelt guidance from a good friend of mine who owns, and I'll do the plug here, Cherry Beach Studio in Toronto. Yeah,
Is that where you recorded it?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
I did. They were fantastic. Yes.
And you knew them already? You knew somebody that did this? Like, they're your friend?
Yeah. He owns it. Carm owns it. Debbie's husband.
Mm-hmm. Debbie's husband?
Yeah.
The lady that did the pajama thing when we recorded her the other day?
The one and only.
Pajama lady.
She'll love that.
Yeah, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, wow. So it must have taken quite a number of hours to record that then. A lot of retakes. How did you maintain your morale as you were doing it?
My morale was good. I was a little concerned about the integrity of my voice, because the day one I read, I think, about 5 hours, and day two I read about 4 hours. And then I took a day off. The studio was doing some editing, and I listened to it all, and I was like, oh shit. Day one just was me figuring it out and learning. So I ended up recording all of day one again, and it worked out great. Yeah, and my voice held out. I think I needed that third day to rest, but it was good.
A lot goes into it. I don't think you know this, but my aunt, who passed away, who I talk about all the time because I love her so much, she had dementia. She was a teacher and she loved books. She didn't have any children, and as her teaching, I think she'd started with Canadian National Institute for the Blind, CNIB, back, I think, in the 90s. And this was well before books on tape were popular. So she read over 500 books on tape for blind people. And she had the most beautiful narrating voice. And it's a lot of effort to read out loud. I homeschooled for 15 years and I love reading children's books out loud, but I do not love reading this kind of thing out loud. It's not my favorite thing. I find it very hard to concentrate on what I'm reading and hear myself. So it always impresses me, people that can read out loud, especially for an extended amount of time.
Yeah. Thank you.
Incredible.
Yeah. It was a really great experience from start to finish. Yeah. So amazing.
So I wanted to talk about our hair for a second. We're gonna do chick talk for a second, because your hair's like, what the heck? It's like you just threw it up today, and I'm like, Liz, don't give a shit. I mean, no. But me too, because when my hair gets up to when this is my day, when it starts like this, it's time to wash your hair.
Yeah, I think anybody, well, a lot of women, and particularly ones with long hair, it's a big time commitment to do it all. The washing, the drying, the styling. I try to get 3 or 4 days in between washes. So yeah, the last day is always up. So I guess we're on the same hair schedule.
And it'll be
you're getting in tune with. Yeah, you're getting in tune with a new friend, right? So you're past menopause. Well, I am, maybe not you, but
I'm done.
Friends get on the same schedule. So now in our older years, we're on the same hair schedule.
So are you washing it tomorrow? Because I'm going to wash
Yeah,
tomorrow.
yeah,
And
I am.
I've had a fire. So like the one day I was working outside and for hours, and I just had a fire on. So my hair I smell like the fire too. I don't
Mm,
care.
yeah,
Because I'm at home just filming and doing
exactly.
work at home, right? But
Yeah.
I have curly-ish hair, wavy hair, and I have a keratin treatment. And I didn't realize that I did know that there's some great ones and some not so great ones. This one's a really good nourishing one for the hair. But the other thing I didn't realize is my new hairdresser, when she found out that I had done a keratin treatment and then she washed my hair, she says to me, "Oh, good, your hair doesn't smell like cat urine." And I'm
What?
like, "What?
I
Cat urine?"
forgot about keratin treatments.
And
I did that many years ago.
did
They're
you?
fabulous.
She said that some keratin treatments smell like cat urine for like literally the duration of the time that it's in your hair. And I'm like, oh my God, that's
Ew.
like a year. Could you imagine? I would have died if I had that every single time. So
Yeah.
my hair smells nice when I wash it. It does not smell like cat urine. Oh, could you imagine?
I'd be washing it 3 times a day until that smell went away. That would be awful.
I think I just think you'd almost not want to wash it. You probably would just want to stay away from it. Can you imagine going to the
Mm.
pool with your friends or the beach with your friends and
Oh,
just
because
sitting
that's when the
around
smell comes out when it gets wet,
when it gets wet?
right? Like a dog, right? Yeah, like
Yes,
the skunk on a dog. Yes.
yes,
Got
yeah.
it.
So anyway, okay. So today I wanted to talk to you about I wanted to continue on with the story of Victimtown. You created this great metaphor, and the sort of the first stop is the ego arena. And oh my God, you started the chapter off with what I put in capital letters as the whale. The
The
whale,
whale.
not the whale as in an ocean whale, but WAIL.
Mm,
You woke up one morning when in the no in the middle of the night to your mom screaming or wailing. I'm assuming I think it was your mom. It must
yeah.
have been your
Yeah.
mom.
Yes. Yes, it
And
was
you
my
just thought
mom.
it was never going to end. You didn't know what it was. You probably had no context for even what that sound was. And you kind of like tell this story about that. And then yeah, how do we know we're in ego we're in the ego arena? And how does it tie into the whale? Like, because that was pretty a heavy story. I'm not sure if you want to go into the story. I don't want to tell all your stories because people have to read something also in the book. So
Yeah, I think that story is best read by the reader. That's my most traumatic memory. I can retell it now after
mm-mm,
having had EMDR
yeah.
therapy.
Oh yeah.
Um, it's a better story.
I want to touch on that
Yeah,
afterwards. So
yeah,
if
yeah.
you wanted to
Okay.
touch on that anytime, you're welcome to, because we're going to touch on that today too.
Okay, cool. The ego arena was created not as much as a place that we go to a specific place in Victimtown, but more as kind of an overview of that town. And the purpose is to introduce the reader to the two voices we have in our head, to let them know that they do have a heart voice, and to become aware of the different messaging and the different feelings that each of the voices in our head invoke in us. Yeah.
Okay. So do you think like the way that you understand ego and the way that you describe it, like sometimes I've read, the ego's bad, put, let's forget about the ego. We don't want to blah 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 fan the ego. But the ego's the thing that keeps us safe when we cross the street. It helps us to have boundaries and defines like who we are and how we can operate in this world as well. So what is it one of the operating systems that we have? Like is the ego part of an operating system in our heart voice? Like how would you say it works with us? And how has it gotten so out of control?
I think that it's I think that it's the quintessential human journey for us to forget how we came to be born, and how we were and what we truly are on a soul level, and that we are meant to figure that out at some point. And for each of us, that's different. And I would challenge you a little bit, and I'm not by any means an expert on ego or those concepts, but the way I look at it, the ego voice is the one that keeps us afraid, the one that keeps us small, the one that encourages competition and scarcity and judgment. And it's our heart voice where, and in our hearts, that our intuition lies. And maybe you're thinking like the survival instinct, you know, to
I think we're actually we're talking about the same thing. I'm talking about when because the fear and all of that is when the ego gets out of control. But my contention is if we didn't have an ego, that's when we sort of move into bliss, where we don't even understand like rules of like, how do these things work? Like, do I need to cross the road, or I can just cross the road? The ego keeps us safe to some extent, and it's meant to bring us to the heart voice. But it's just all of a sudden it's gotten out of control because of the anxiety and the fear. And it's like, now it's ruling. This is my sort of take on it. It's ruling what we're supposed to be. So I think I'm not challenging what you're saying. I'm just saying, how did it get so out of control, and how do we bring it back so that our heart voice is the thing that we're listening to?
Yeah, and you make a good point, Carolyn. I think that the ego does keep us grounded to some degree, and it keeps us in this earthly human experience. Because yes, if we're 100% in our heart voice, we are so far spiritual that we're not here on earth, right? And yeah, that poses a whole another set of problems.
Yeah, that's not what we're talking about. So.
No, I know. Yeah, I think that it gets out of control when we start to listen to it more, when we believe it, when we buy into the messages and the fear. I think that's when it spins out of control, and it all starts in childhood, right? With whatever happened that caused us to make up some crazy meaning and then adopt a shitty belief or three, and then pile on some coping mechanisms to protect ourselves.
Yeah.
Right. So it's the going back and excavating those things to expose the false foundation on which they were built, right?
Yeah.
And then our heart voice is free to show up more often. And then we've got a little bit more balance. Then, as you said, the ego and all of those Victimtown voices they're not running the fucking show anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
And so, like your story, like when it started with the whale, it's quite a jarring, of course, like you went through something in childhood that I didn't experience, but that doesn't mean that I don't have ego as well, right? And I'm going to have my issues. And you brought up two that I thought were really so relatable to everybody in this world. I'm pretty sure everybody: gossip and comparison. And I loved I will never forget this. Jimmy Iovine, who is a music producer, once said when on American Idol years ago, there's a reason why horses wear blinders. And I'll never forget that. Like, just stay in your lane and don't look at anybody else. And sometimes I think of that when I think, well, if I were the only person left on earth, would it matter where I lived? Would it matter what I drove? Would it matter what I wore? None of that stuff would matter. But comparison can be a huge thing. And then gossip, especially comparing, like, oh, do you see what Jessica did? You see what Josie did over there? Oh, yeah, no, not good.
Yeah.
That's I don't know.
Well, there's a lot in there. Let's talk about the comparison first. I really love that example of the horses with the blinders on. It's really hard for us as humans to keep the blinders on. Society wants to compare. People want to compare us, and the worst and the hardest one to overcome is when we compare ourselves to other people. It's we all learn things and progress in our own time when we're meant to. And I think and this is not my IP, I've seen it around, that the only thing we need to compare ourselves to is ourselves, and to try and be better than we were yesterday. Right? To not make the same mistakes, to grow, to learn, to become a better human. And that's our purpose and our own journey. And sometimes we make that progress in leaps and bounds. And sometimes it's 2 steps forward and 1 step backwards.
Yeah.
That's a common path too. And sometimes it's a fucking detour, like 5 miles off to the side on a little twirly world, get lost thing, and then finding our way back.
Yeah.
And that's okay too.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You know, we're meant to have those experiences because that's the way we learn.
Mm. So true.
Yeah.
So true. Just compare yourself to where you were, and not compare yourself, but have I made progress? Yes, I have, and move on.
Yeah. Yeah. And to notice that in other people too, and to help pull people along if you're making good progress, and to be cognizant to not be holding other people back. You know, that's also a common thing in comparison, when people get insecure or feel threatened by other people's progress or great achievements if they're not experiencing quite the same themselves, you know?
Yeah, yeah. One of the things I learned in my coaching sessions was that when you see somebody else getting something that you want, that you're actually close to getting it too, because you actually have the ability to see it. Which I
Yes.
thought, when I realized that, I'm like, oh, how wonderful. Now
Right.
I don't need to be like, oh, that person's getting that thing, so there's less for me. It's that person's getting that thing, and I also can do that as well.
Yeah. So
Just a
it
different.
ties into the whole feelings of jealousy, right? Which comes out of comparison. And yeah, when we notice those things, it's because now they're available to us.
Yeah, yeah.
And when we're
So
happy for those people, then we've got a better shot at it happening for us.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So you you talk about your EMDR sessions, which I'm a little bit familiar with, but not really. So I do want to talk about that, because it was an interesting thing. And one of the things that you said, I'm just looking at my notes here, you talked about feeling my feelings, I came to learn, is like kryptonite for the Victimtown voices that try to keep me trapped in my old memories. And you were feeling the feelings, and feeling feelings that you hadn't felt for a while, that you maybe didn't even know you had to feel. I loved your analogy. You said the people at the place were the emotional counterpart to the massage therapist who like touches a muscle and you're like, oh, I didn't know I was sore there, but I do have pain there. Because my energy worker, it was described by a channel once, my energy worker like massages my energy, and I like oh, emotionally they're massaging. And you and I sometimes we've said before, like, oh, we're woo woo, and I know that sometimes in woo woo circles we can woo woo circle people can be accused of spiritually bypassing and not feeling your feelings, like, oh, just think a positive thought. But that's not actually what any of those teachings teach. It's, you need to feel the feelings and you need to release them. And I'm not going to say EMDR was part of your journey. Can you explain how that tied in, and what it was and how it affected you? Because I think that that's going to be something that's newer, that people, not newer, but people are starting to recognize as helpful.
Yeah, it's a great modality, and for everybody, it's a little bit different. And I get into it in the book with a longer version story. So I'll just do the Cole's notes here.
Yeah.
There were a few sessions to set up the therapy. And so it's, what it does is it reprograms the pathways in the brain, and it forms new connections that are safer and that allow me, or whoever's having the therapy, to feel the feelings and to resolve it. So when I used to tell or think about that memory, it was, I mean, even 50 years later, it was really traumatic for me. And I would get really upset and cry and feel fear and anxiety. And if wine was involved, I would probably blubber. Wasn't pretty. And after the treatment, I could tell the same story, and it still was sad, but it didn't affect me the same way. It was lighter. It was lighter somehow, and it was okay. It was okay. And it no longer has that hold on me. That memory no longer evokes that panic. It literally was a panic when I would think about that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you still have that panic with any of your childhood memories? Because they're all negative, you had said.
Yeah.
Or do you
That
feel like
was
you've been able to use that to resolve?
the hardest one. That was the only one that I did EMDR therapy for. And I think that that paved the way and set the tone for me to work through some of the other ones without having to go through the therapeutic sessions of EMDR for each one. So
Wow, okay.
yeah.
So do you recommend, like, I've seen videos online. Can someone just do it with a video online? Or do you recommend, especially the first time going to a therapist and working through it? Like, because I don't know that could you ever have even gotten the same result if you'd done it by yourself?
I so that's a really unique thing. I think it very much depends on the person and their mental health and what the traumatic event is. If you can afford it or have access to it, I do recommend professionals for that. I don't know anybody that's done it on their own.
Mhm,
I mean, I think the whole tapping process is kind of a diluted, somewhat similar thing to EMDR,
mhm.
and that can be very helpful. I am a fan of professionals.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I love that. Um, a little bit later on in the chapter, you said, you talked about the heart voice, because this is the ego chapter and we've got the heart voice. And you said the heart voice allows the light to come in. And I really just like the way you put that because, the heart is light, the heart is love,
Mm.
and that's a very, very high, beautiful, fine vibration. I'm so sorry for the woo woo words.
Yeah, no, no, we're
But
gonna
it's
get woo
but
woo.
but
It's
we're gonna
okay.
but like I think of the ego as like the sludge and the and
Yeah,
it's weighing you down. It's the extra weight and and the heart is light. And so what is it about the heart voice that can offer that light?
I think it's a two-way street. You know, when we open our hearts and show the world who we really are, and we rely on the innate wisdom that we have there, that the light the light shows, it attracts the same light in people, and it also allows the love to come in. Like we have to love ourselves first. We have to open our hearts, and when we let the love out first, then the pathway exists for
Mhm.
the love to come in,
Mm, I love that.
right? It's hard to let the love in if we're not open. If the ego it's mucky and thick and sludgy, and it's armor, right? It's armor and protection, and it's a shield. And the love, it's hard for the love to penetrate that real love,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
I love that. I love that. I was thinking about, like, as you're talking, I was thinking about what it would have been like if we had met each other 5 years ago. Is this the Liz that I would have gotten to know? Or do you feel so completely different in how you're showing up? Like what would you have been like 5 years ago?
So 5 years ago, I was exposed to, and I knew and I understood a lot of these concepts. I hadn't applied them to myself.
Mm, the work. You didn't, it's the
I
work,
hadn't I
how to
hadn't done,
integrate it.
right. I'd done a little bit of the work, but clearly not enough. I mean, there
Right,
was a
right.
lot of shit still stuck down there, and two big chunks of my life, my childhood, and then 13 years in a relationship that was toxic. And those two big ongoing events just got locked up and shoved down. And I thought, well, I'll do the work, the little bit of work on other things, challenges that I'd had. And hopefully those things will just resolve themselves down there somehow,
Mm. Oh, it's
you know,
like
and
putting paint on the walls and not dealing with the cracked foundation,
exactly.
right?
Yes, yes,
Interesting.
yes. Or hoping that, you'll just come back one day and it'll be the color you want it to be, right? The sun will eventually fade it, and then
Yeah,
you'll like
yeah.
it.
Well, you know, it's interesting that you say about that, because now we're going to talk about me for a second.
Yeah.
You know, when your best friend Deb's book came into my life, when my aunt had gone into long-term care, and then her book came in. I mean, really, it was just a guidebook for how to acclimate to long-term care, what to expect, how people are feeling, all of that stuff. And it was
Yep.
so simple in some ways, and yet so profound, because I had read all the stuff. I mean, I had read Eckhart Tolle. I love Byron Katie. I love channeled works, as I've told you. But um, at that point, I had just hired my coach a number of months before, and I was just learning how to integrate it all and do the work and like put it all into practice. And that's what, when you're in the thick of it, it's been hard, because we and I've talked about before. Every time you think you've like peeled a layer off that onion, and then there's another fucking layer, and you're like, damn,
Right.
right? And you're like, it's this like series of opening in your understanding, and then God, you have to integrate. And sometimes that's a challenge. Like, it's not all roses. It's not all a bed of roses. So I really
No, it's
appreciate that
not.
you've done the work integrating, because I know what that's like. I've done it for 3 years, and it's still continual. Even though I'm not, the coach isn't in my life anymore, I still am applying all of those lessons, right? You still must come up with things once in a while where you're like, you've got to work yourself through that situation using the tools that you've had. Surely you've come up.
Oh, of course. And
Yeah,
that's
still.
the same for everybody. I mean, there are, some people that are so highly evolved. They are incredibly rare, and I certainly don't know any of them. It's the journey of a lifetime. And I think we go through different phases where it's active and there's a lot going on. And then, we float along for a little while, but inevitably shit happens, right? Shit happens when we least expect it. It's out of our control. And then we're having to navigate a new shitstorm. And it takes conscious effort to not end up in Victimtown.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if we do, it's not
that.
the end of the world. I mean, there are gifts. And that's what finally got the job done for me, is the realization that all the places in Victimtown offer gifts. That's where we learn the biggest life lessons. I mean, all those places are where we go when we're not quite ready to face the pain.
Yeah.
And it's okay. It's okay to be there for a time. And however long that time is different for everybody. And it's different for different shitstorms throughout our life. And it's okay. However, problems arise, big problems arise when we get stuck there.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Love it. Okay, before we ask questions, I just want to remind people, navigating shitstorms on Audible now.
On Audible.
On Audible. Finally.
Yes. Oh, and I'm just going to say,
yeah.
if you listen right to the very, 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 very end, there's a funny little thing.
Oh, nice. Oh, that's going to be fun.
Which I did in the studio, and thought that would be the end of it, and they actually they left it in.
Oh,
and
nice.
And I thought, oh, okay, guess that's meant to be there.
Is it like after the end of the is it like after the end of the trailers of the movie, like you have like a little snippet of like the character like does okay, that's gonna be exciting. Okay,
exactly.
I'm looking forward to that. I love that. Okay, which language would you pick up if you could learn it instantly? What would you like to learn?
Spanish.
Me too.
100%. Hunder, as my daughter-in-law Catherine would say. Hunder.
I love that. I don't think I've asked you this one. What is your favorite comedy movie of all time? I haven't asked you that yet, have I?
Comedy movie. I mean, I like the old rom-coms, like, when Harry Met Sally and Serendipity, those kinds of rom-coms. Although I really loved Steve Martin in The Jerk. Remember that, when he's running away?
I don't remember.
And all I'm taking with me is this book and this pen, and he's running away from home, and this chair. And he starts loading all these random shit up as he walks down the driveway, running away from home. Yeah, I haven't seen that in forever, but I remember that laughing my ass off.
I love that. I love that. My favorites would be like Elf or Step Brothers, like really
Oh
quotable
yeah,
movies that are like, and I love Will Ferrell. I love especially when Will Ferrell acts like a
yeah,
child, right? Like he
yeah.
does it so well. But comedy is a big thing in our home because it's one of the things that ties my husband and I together. Like we love seeing comedians, we love doing the lines. So many, like he knows most of the plots and subplots from Seinfeld. So you can name something and go, what was the subplot for that? And he's like, knows it. So I think
That
that's
was a great series. Yeah. Well, watch The
yeah.
Jerk. I'm going to see if I can find it
Yeah, I'm
now
going to
that
see.
I've
Yeah,
remembered it.
exactly. So along the same vein, since we were talking about comedians in general, because my husband and I like going to comedy shows, do you have a favorite comedian, or is that like something that you enjoy?
I do, but I do like it. It's not something that I seek out. I've been to Second City and I've seen some other comedians. Mostly when my boys come around because they really like that, then they'll share what they've been watching. We'll watch some videos and sometimes some things on TV
Yeah.
for comedians, and they're really in tune with that industry. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. We so recently we saw some shows at last year we saw shows at what's it called? Scotiabank Center. Is that what it's called now? The old Sky Dome?
What,
What's it called?
ACC?
Yeah, maybe we're at ACC. I think we were at ACC, which is
That's what
not
I
called
still call
ACC
it.
anymore. Is
I
that called
know.
like I don't know what it's called.
And then
Anyway,
it was Rogers, and then
it
it
was
was
a big
wait,
venue in
yes,
Toronto, and they
yeah,
took your
the big
phones
one.
from you, and they locked your phones up, and everyone had to have their phones locked, and it was literally a shit show. It set the tone. This was hilarious because it set the tone for a lot of people to be mad, which was an interesting way to start a show, a comedy show. And I understand that they wanted to take the phones because they don't want people recording their shows, putting it on the internet and that kind of thing. But it was interesting because there's a lot of people have babysitters now. You can't reach the babysitter because your phone's locked up. Like
Wow.
people were pissed. And these were big names too.
Yeah.
But it was worth it to go to the show, but it actually was such a turnoff. We said we will never go to a show in a big venue like this again. So like one of my favorites is Pete Holmes, and he does shows in smaller venues, and so nice just to be able to walk in and enjoy the show and walk out and be done with it. But I can
Yeah.
understand why the community.
Wow. I've never heard of that happening at a
Yeah,
large venue.
it's new. It's new. It's
Crazy.
irritating. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, big names did it too. I'm not going to say the big names, but in case they're watching.
Well, I mean, I don't know. You didn't have any warning? It wasn't disclosed when you bought the
Well, we
tickets?
figured no, but we figured
It
the
was
second time we went because we saw two like within 5 months of each other, and we wondered if it was going to happen the second time. But we had gone to see Roger Waters from Pink Floyd, and they didn't lock up the phones, so
Mhm.
it must be having something to do with the material, and the comedians were just not having any of it. So
Interesting. Well, hey, good for them.
yeah.
They should be doing it at schools, locking up the phones.
Yeah, yeah. My last question, you probably don't care about this one, but I'm going to ask anyway. Which sport would you play professionally if you were an athlete, or if you could have the skill of an athlete and you could do something?
Oh, that's easy for me. Gymnastics.
Ah,
I did competitive gymnastics when I was young, and if you're not competing at a national level by the time you're 12, then you're over the hill.
yeah.
I loved it. I loved it so much. Yeah, if I could be instantly great at anything, it would be that.
What I love about gymnastics is they fly. Like it just
Yeah,
looks like they fly,
yeah, yeah.
right?
I
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, I would play hockey though, because my
Would you?
kids, everyone in my family plays hockey, and I skate okay. Like you know how you learned how to skate when you got with your figure skates on the ice and you're okay, kind of thing. And then I switched to hockey skates, and I never got any better. Like I can't stop properly. I can't turn in. The things that hockey players can do on ice is incredible to me. Like they look
Hmm.
so at ease. At ease.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. That's a great sport too.
Yeah. Well, it's nice chatting with you today. I hope you have a wonderful day. I can see the sun pouring in where you are, so I'm a little envious. It's gonna be lovely.
Yes. Well, we're taking advantage of it. We got lots of cloudy and rainy days coming our way.
Yeah, yeah. Well, all right. Thank you.
All
Nice
right.
chatting. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.